This week, we're digging into the van. And the first thing that we need to do is beef up this lean, mean cleaning machine. If you're just joining, we're making a budget-oriented build to take us off-grid in all seasons, but still be a solid road trip van. We're also tallying the entire cost of the project along the way, in case if you're interested in doing a similar project on your own. But first, let's get caught up on what we've done off-camera, which at this point isn't a whole lot. We've replaced the power steering pump, which was a small $75 fix. Made a junkyard run to replace a broken taillight, rear view mirror, and changed out the carpet and passenger seat. I also scored a color matching replacement driver's door, which was huge. And all of these items only totaled $110, which brings our running total to $1,185. And to your guaranteed disapproval, I've removed the roller skating janitor. I did, however, leave one on the back for now. Also, this guy has a name now. In order to pay homage to his past life as a janitorial van, we're naming him after my favorite cartoon janitor, Scruffy. It's very safe to say that the wheels on Scruffy are pretty trashy looking, and the tires have lived a full life. I can't show up at the trailhead spilling out of a van looking like this and expect my friends to say that they know me. So to bring in some fresh style points, I bought the van a new pair of shoes. Legit set of off-road style wheels with some Toyo all-terrain 3 tires installed are going to help turn this minivan into an adventure van. But there's one small problem. Right now, they're just too big. But that's okay, because today we're going to be installing a lift kit to make this wheel set work. After a good amount of research, I found a company called Journeys Offroad, which specializes in building lift kits for these and other models of minivans. With the kit from Journeys Offroad, you get 6 body spacers for the front, leaf spring hangers and shackles with corresponding hardware for the rear, as well as a front bumper relocation kit. The kit I bought was called the Supervan Lift 2 to 5 inch lift kit, and we'll be staying on the low end of 2 inches. In the future, if I'm in the mood, maybe we could go taller, but at this point, I want the van to drive nicely on the freeway, so a 2-inch lift will be perfect for that. The first part we'll be installing today are the body lift spacers, which I thought would be the sketchiest part of this upgrade, but really isn't too bad. To do so, we'll actually have to lift the body of the van up off the subframe, which is held on by 6 large bolts. First, we'll start by making sure we're parked on level ground and chocking all 4 tires. To make the lift possible, we need to do a couple things in the engine bay. We'll need to disconnect the air intake and remove the fan shroud. The thing about doing a body lift is that the van of the body is going to lift up, but the motor and the rest of the mechanics are going to stay in place. So our motor is actually going to sit 2 inches lower in the engine bay than before. To get our fan to clear the shroud, we're going to do a little trimming to allow clearance for the new body position. I read this won't affect the cooling efficiency of the motor, but it's something that I'm going to keep my eye on. With everything in the engine bay prepped for the job, it's time to split this van in 2, one side at a time. Since we want to raise the body up off the subframe, the lift points we need to grab are actually way up here, under the headlights. To get to our lift points, we need to remove the lights, grille, and bumper. Have you ever seen the movie Face Off? This is totally the van version of that film. Since it's such a high lift point, I went and picked up one of these high lift jacks to get the job done. I figured it would also be handy to have on the van just in case we need it when going into the backcountry, so we'll end up mounting this jack on the back of the van at some point down the road. We'll be inserting body spacers one side at a time, so double checking that our chocks are all in place and the van's not going to roll away on us. First, we need to loosen all the bolts without removing them yet. Also, we need to unbolt the emergency brake bracket under the driver's seat since it'll bind if we lift it while it's in place. Once all 6 subframe bolts are loose and threaded in a few turns, we can move back to the driver's side and fully remove these 3 bolts. Next, very slowly, we'll start to jack up the van from under the headlight. While doing this, make sure that under the hood there are no wire harnesses, hose, or lines getting pulled tight. And with the all clear, we'll make our way up just high enough to slide our spacers in place. Once this is done, we'll hand screw our frame bolts in a few turns and we'll move on to the next side and repeat these same steps. After torquing down all the bolts with Loctite, the front install is done. We'll be adding another inch or so of height in the front, but we'll get to that after we install the rear portion of the kit. The rear is quite a bit more involved than the front. We'll actually need to jack up the back of the van and support it from the frame instead of any portion of the rear drivetrain, since we'll be all but removing the rear axle. Once the van is resting on the jack stands, we'll be using our jack under the rear end. That way we can raise and lower it to relieve the tension off the leaf springs in order to get the new hangers and shackles installed. So another reason why I bought this kit is that the way the stock leaf spring hangers are drilled, the rear tire sits further forward in the wheel well than centered, which when fitting a larger tire can cause some rubbing issues. We could solve this by drilling a new hole that's more centered, which would be a relatively easy solution, but the kit that I bought replaces these hangers anyway, allowing for more height and solving the off-centered issue. Again, we'll be tackling this job one side at a time, and be prepared for a potential battle. The two bolts holding on my driver's side leaf spring were rusted on and took me a good 2 hours just to remove the two bolts. And there's one unfortunate obstacle when removing the driver's side hanger, and that's the bolts holding it on are blocked off by the gas tank. But Journeys has you covered. They package up replacement bolts and instruct you to saw off the heads of the old ones so they can be removed to the opposite side without having to drop the gas tank. This is a massive time saver, and it really shows the attention to detail that Journey takes when they put their kits together. Before we can mount our new shackles, we need to grease them, and you'll need a grease gun for this. I just pumped it up enough until I saw grease run out of the end of it. If you don't do this, you'll get premature wear and audible squeaking out the back. With the rear leaf unhooked and our old shackles and hangers removed, it's just a matter of mounting up the new ones and bolting the springs back into place. I went ahead and greased every bolt before reinstallation to help prevent seizing in the future. Once one side is done, repeat all these steps on the passenger side, aside from having to cut the heads off of the hanger bolts. And since we had to remove the shocks anyway for this job, now is a great time to replace them. Mine were shot anyway, so doing this alone will improve the ride quality immensely. I actually lifted it quite a bit in the back, and it's on the lowest setting. I almost didn't do the lowest setting, but I'm glad I did. So we're gonna have to do some torsion bar adjusting up front to try and level it out a bit, and it might solve a little bit more of my rubbing issues. But first, I'm gonna clean up this disaster of tools around me. This is what 8 hours of wrenching turns into. I should probably eat something too. Next, I installed the bumper relocation kit, which was extremely simple. They're just made of a couple brackets and bolts made to push the bumper up 2 inches back into place. Since we did a body lift, without this, we'd have a van that has an extremely bad underbite. Our final step is to adjust our torsion bars. We need to get the front tires off the ground in order to mess with these at all. And just be aware, if you touch these bolts, you will need to get in alignment. And you're also changing the preload of your suspension, which can make it ride a little bit stiffer. In the kit instructions, it recommends removing these bolts altogether to completely clean any rust and grime from the threads, and to add some fresh grease to the tips, which I went ahead and did. Next, we'll screw these bolts back in, and without over tightening them, screw them all the way in until they're maxed out. This will allow us to set the van back onto the ground and lower them to the height that we're after. I added some masking tape to the center of the fender wells for consistent measurement between sides, and lowering the torsion bolts a little bit at a time brought the height of the front to be level with the rear. Your suspension will most likely settle a bit during driving, so I'd recommend setting the height, driving around town, and then resetting it a couple times before you schedule an alignment. With our height set, we can put the front end back on and trim the front bumper a bit to create enough space out front, and fold this back pinch weld seam in the rear portion of the wheel well to prevent any tire rubbing. You'll probably have to cut a little portion towards the bottom of it, but I'm leaving this little tab in the bottom so we can maybe fit these little fender garnishes back on. And with just one weekend of work, we've transformed this creepy cleaner's van into the start of a badass mini adventure van. It's crazy what a nice set of wheels, tires, and suspension upgrades can do. Scruffy now has almost as much clearance as my pickup, so I feel just fine taking this thing off the beaten path. While we still have a long way to go to make this van what I have envisioned, I at least have something that's starting to look the part. I still need some serious bike storage in the back as it's still an empty box, so I'm thinking I might make a temporary solution for the rest of this riding season. The all-wheel drive lets this thing climb right up steep, loose hills, and it drives nicely in town still. So now is the time to add up our running total. Previously, we were at $1,185. The most expensive portion of this build are the wheels and tires. Together, after mounting and balancing, they came up to $1,200, more than the van itself, which is extremely hilarious. The lift kit was $350, and the new shocks, front and rear, were $175, which brings us to a grand total so far of $2,910. I'm super confident that we're going to be able to get this adventure ready for under $5,000, which is a pretty great bang for your buck. If you're interested in seeing where this van goes, definitely subscribe. There's still a ton of work to be done on Scruffy before next riding season. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, and to support everything we do on this channel, be sure to check out my Patreon page as well as my merch page. Thanks for watching today, everyone, and as always, until next time, keep that rubber side down.